What's up everyone, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick and I have an album review for you. So one of the bigger releases that I wanted to cover was the newest offering from Cradle of Filth, Is Futile. This comes out on the 22nd of October on Nuclear Blast Records. This band formed in the UK in 1991. This is their 15th studio album, and I don't know, they're kind of interesting in terms of how to describe them. If I say black metal, I'm sure a lot of black metal fans will say, no, they're not black metal. But black and death metal doesn't necessarily fit either. I've heard extreme goth metal. I think Metal Archives called them that. They've always kind of been part of the black metal circuit in terms of my first exposures to black metal as far as imagery. It might have been Cradle of Filth. I remember seeing loads of ads for them all over metal publications. And at that point, I really wasn't sure what to make of them. And if we're being honest here, I've never really been a fan. I've listened to Cruelty and the Beast and maybe a bit of Midian, but none of it really gelled, so I kind of just ignored them for the most part. But, you know, since we're doing a review channel, I definitely want to check out stuff that I didn't necessarily like before. And I'm open to hearing stuff now because I'm older, my tastes have changed. So who knows, I might end up liking it. What I do know about this band is there's a lot of turnover. Danny Filth is the only original member, and there are lots of members that have gone in and out of there. I believe Nick Barker's played in there. Adrian Erlandson, I believe, at one point was a member too. There's a lot of people that have come and gone through here, and the style has always been just kind of interesting. And I'm gonna get into that just because this is probably the first time I've sat down and listened to an entire Cradle of Filth album since I was a teenager. So this has been an interesting experience. So once you get past the very gothic and cinematic opening intro, the fate of the world is on our shoulders, you get into, again, this kind of cacophony of extreme metal. Existential Terror definitely has elements of black metal, has a lot of elements of melodic death metal, which is kind of pockmarked all over the place. Black metal is definitely at the core of this, at least I guess for the most part. It's not necessarily a very raw style of black metal. It's more like along the lines of bands like Dimmu Borgir. I'd say that's a pretty fair comparison, especially in terms of like Dimmu Borgir's more popular years, you know, Progeny is the Great Apocalypse and all that. But also a lot of very melodic riffing and lots of symphonic elements. This has kind of been the core of Cradle of Filth sound. They love the gothic atmosphere, lush synths, and also some extra instrumentation and loads of dynamics, because this band is definitely in love with theatrics still. I swear every time I look at a picture of this band, well, the lineup's changed, and some form of the imagery has been altered some way. I know Danny Filth used to do more traditional corpse paint, and then he kind of did the more vampire thing with the contacts, and now he looks like Bondage Devil. It's always kind of a wild journey, even visually sometimes with these guys. But this opening track is really solid. And honestly, across the board, I really dug the guitar work. The guitar work is fiercely melodic. The riffs are very, like, along the lines of classic heavy metal, but also melodic death metal. I definitely got a lot of notes of, like, Hypocrisy, early In Flames. They love big, lush harmonies. Not a tremendous amount of solos, but the harmonies on here are quite good, and there's a lot of great catchy riffs on here. And when you get into songs like How Many Tears to Nurture a Rose, I think it's like eight tears roughly, and Necromantic Fantasies, you get some fiercely Iron Maiden-like heavy metal moments, especially when it comes down to the melodies, but of course all that is steeped in gothic atmosphere. In fact, the synth line that's on the chorus of Necromantic Fantasies kind of reminds me of Psycho. Like, it has like a Hitchcock-like sort of vibe to it, but of course, you know, very gothic, because it's Cradle of Filth. And it really adds a lot to the atmosphere in here. And, you know, I think much with any Cradle of Filth release, the scope is always very grand in terms of presenting something that is very immersive and steeped in atmosphere and laboring all things dark, but musically kind of just all over the place. When you get down to songs like Disclosure Between a Man and His Soul and Dying Embers, you almost get a little bit of that classic Death Doom sound, you know, kind of like early Paradise Lost or My Dying Bride, except of course steeped in loads of symphonic elements. Though I think Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride both have a lot of like extra elements in their music too. I don't think they are played as forward as they are in terms of Cradle of Filth, which kind of brings up an issue with the mix. For the most part, I like it, but it is so damn layered, and sometimes layers overpower one another. While I love the intense riff-driven madness that is Crawling King Chaos, I think has just a nasty, thrashy vibe to it. Some of the orchestration and keys and extra female vocals kind of overpower some of the riffs at some points. Now, I like the orchestration on there, and the female vocals on here are really good. They're very dramatic. She can sing very well. I believe she's the newest member in the band, too. And she even adds some really cool spoken words at the beginning of The Dying of Embers, but it drowns out the riffs. And honestly, the guitar work is what really drives a lot of the songs for me. The melodies they come up with are really good. They both play off each other well, and they deliver that intense crunch, and that is backed up by some very intense drumming across most of this album. And honestly, when it comes down to like flat out black metal moments, it's kind of hard to pick them out. Again, this band isn't necessarily a black metal band, but they're also like a gothic metal band and kind of a death metal band. They're kind of hard to pinpoint, but the imagery always tells you, yeah, let's throw them in the black metal pack and, let's see if they get along with everyone. But The Dying of Embers definitely screams more black metal for sure, and that one is probably the only one I'd say that is predominantly black metal. Like, there's definitely some cool dissonant melodies. The atmosphere feels just a little bit darker on there. And it's kind of interesting because all of this feels dark, but it kind of has like this layer of camp to it where it's not meant to be taken super seriously. It's more of a theatrical performance, and that is definitely a big thing with Cradle of Filth. Now, when it comes down to the big negative, it's still Danny Filth for me. And it's only in essentially a few things that he does. I love his deep growls. I think they're really good, and his mid-range growl is pretty solid. But sometimes the vocal cadences seem to be a bit much. I kind of like the more slow, deliberate sort of cadences he throws in there, but it's that damn baby scream. That shriek is all over the place, and it's not used intermittently on here. It is used a lot. It almost made the bones in my ear want to jump out and throw themselves in the fucking river. I can't take that high-pitched shriek. It's not very tuneful, and it's just there. And I know he can do it, and it's impressive that he has this range, but maybe not that range. The closest thing I could compare it to is maybe Tom Araya's token high-pitched scream that he did in the early years, but that worked because he didn't do it all the time. It was just one big accent, and he can really carry it, and it actually sounded pretty good. I actually really like those high-pitched screams. Danny Filth's high-pitched screams hurt. They are grating to the ear, but I like most of what else he does. And the only other thing I could say as a negative, and at least for me, is there are too many interludes. And this one specifically because a lot of these songs lead in with very big orchestral melodies, gothic synths, more atmosphere. And then in between there, you have these instrumental sections that are also that same thing, which pretty much tells me you can cut back a little bit of length and still have all the atmosphere, while these intros or interludes don't add much. I don't mind the intro as much, but the other two, I was like, okay, let's get on with it because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get greeted to this in these songs at some point anyway. But overall, I actually like this. I was kind of surprised. I've never really considered myself a Cradle of Filth fan, as I said before, and I was looking for something to kind of win me over, and to some extent, this did. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I like a lot of the stuff on here, especially guitar work. I cannot sing praises about that enough. I think the guitar work in here is exceptional, and honestly, I think it carries a good chunk of the melody on here. The symphonic elements, while overdone, that is kind of their thing. I just wish they had mixed some of this a little bit differently so they didn't overpower the riffs, because the riffs are the backbone. Danny Filth, kind of an acquired taste when it comes down to vocals. I hate that baby scream to death, but there's other stuff that he does that I think he does really well. And musically, again, I can't really call it black metal. It's not black and death metal. It's gothic something or other. But they have crafted their own identity, and they continue to just pretty much work within that box that is pretty much theirs. And gotta say they did a pretty good job on here. So yeah, if you're a Cradle of Filth fan, I don't know if this is pretty much what you expected from the band, but as an outsider, I'm not regretting buying this, because I did buy this when it came out because, well, I wanted to give it a chance, and there's no buyer's regret here. But yeah, in terms of if you're a fan, I don't know if this is necessarily what all you expected out of the band. Again, I have been listening to them for years, but from an outsider perspective, I can say this is pretty solid, and I recommend checking it out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, click the link down below. And we are still waiting for Bean Sickle 1 to get back to us. I don't want to have to do another drawing, but I feel like if he doesn't get a hold of us after a certain point, we're gonna have to, because I want to give this stack of CDs to someone, because, again, thank you guys so much for your help. This has been an awesome journey, and we already passed 7,600, and it's all due to you guys. So I do want to give that away. Hopefully, Bean Sickle, get a hold of us, and we will get you your shit. But with that, I thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.